I'm on. I'm
Hey
ready.
man, good to see you. Welcome.
What's what's going on? How's it going?
It's another OTX NT day, man. It's gonna be fun. So, hanging out here. Easter is in a few days, and Andrew, I wanted to talk with you, and I know everybody else is because I don't know if you've gotten it lately, but I have gotten it. The question of what day did Jesus die on the cross? I'm going to do a Good Friday service tomorrow. Are you doing Good Friday?
No, I we did kind of a Holy Wednesday celebration. So
You didn't do
we
it
we did, we
Monday,
did a
Thursday?
uh
That'd
I
be
just find
tonight. Yeah.
yeah, my church, if I move anything, it really is hard for people to keep up. So I like
Yeah.
to just we have midweek Wednesday, so we used it. We did a special service last night. It was great. And so yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. But
Well, but
yeah,
we
my
do
brain's all
Good
scrambled.
Friday. Yeah, we do Good
Yeah.
Fridays.
What
Is
makes
that
it
the
so good?
day? Yeah,
What
well,
what makes Friday good?
yeah, is it the day? Is that the day? Because I don't know about you, but I've had people asking me. I know that there's stuff out there on the computer, on the internet, and I'm starting to hear people talk about other days. Now, I used to think people were crazy, just like, hey, you're just counting wrong, right? Because they'd say, oh no, it's got to be this day or whatnot. But I think it's worth a look, like a serious conversation. I know we have a couple articles we've been looking at, talking through some verses, of just, I think, worth entertaining. Um, could it have been a different day? Um, and I think it's important to recognize, like, we know that Sunday is the first of the week. We know that that Jesus resurrected then. And so we just got to work it back of what is that day. So I think it's worth talking about for a few minutes if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we hit record, and now my brain's all scrambled because there is debate, right? And
Yeah.
and it's a little hard to track. But yeah, I know where I am today. I've moved on this in my life, so
Yeah, same
not
here.
opposed to moving again.
Yeah, it's true.
So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get rolling. You want to pray and get started?
Let's do it, man.
All right. If you'll join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah. So, okay, let's start from the beginning of traditional view. Traditional view is Friday crucifixion and Friday uh burial, before Friday afternoon. So sometime Friday afternoon before Friday evening, he's already dead, right? Which then get to because Sabbath is next day, which gets to Sunday. And the question is then how do you get 3 days out of that, right?
Yeah.
That's always the confusing part. People like, if it's 3 days, why is it that? So that's the tradition.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you get three
And
days?
and getting the days isn't as hard. It's really getting the nights, and this is also where it gets a little tricky because evening kicks off. It kicks off a new day. So for us, midnight kicks off a new day. Just back that up to sundown, and that's how the Hebrew um, days start. Going back to Genesis, there was evening and there was morning the first day. So Jesus being on the cross, historically, if there's any part of a day that you're in, it was the practice that you would count that as day one. And so if he goes onto the cross and dies on the daytime of Friday, that is still Friday, but he has to be buried before evening because of Sabbath. And so they get him into the ground while the sun is shining, even though it's going down, and that's daytime one, Friday. And then the sun goes down, and now we have Saturday evening, Saturday daytime, Sunday evening, and that puts us into uh, the third day because we got a piece of Friday, we
Yeah.
got all of Saturday, and we now are on the third day. Sunday, he rises, and so in a sense, it is on the third day, the difficulty there is Jesus referring to the passage in Jonah, where as Jonah was in the belly, the Son of Man will be in the earth 3 days and 3 nights. And so
Yeah.
that's the challenge, right? Because we can say, okay, we got 3 days, and if day there is just any amount of 24-hour period, we did get there. We have a piece of Friday, we have all of Saturday, and we have a piece of Sunday, and so that is 3 days. But if we wanted to say that Jesus was being a little bit more precise, requiring 3 evenings and three daytime
Yeah.
windows, then this theory breaks down a bit.
Yeah, so
So,
That's
yeah.
Matthew 12:40. That's Jesus saying, Son of Man is going to be in the earth 3 days, 3 nights. And so yeah, does 3 days, 3 nights mean literally 3 days, 3 nights? Or is it kind of how the traditional view is, yeah, it's just, 3 days, is what it is. And so the big question I think it is we have though is there evidence that this could be actually taken as 3 literal days and 3 literal days and nights that were, and not just 3 days in general? Is there enough in the text that would say that maybe it was not Friday, but it was actually a little bit earlier in the week? Um, so I don't know. Is there anything like, you and I've kind of kicked around some verses, but is there anything that stands out to you as like, yeah, these are some interesting things to kind of keep an eye on to say, hey, something else might be going on here. It may actually be a little bit of a bigger window than it was all done on Friday.
Right. Yeah. So we get some verbal clues, and some of the questions that have been posed is: do we have a chronology fight between what the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are saying about Jesus having a Passover meal, and John, which places the slaughter of the lambs about the same time Christ is on the cross. And so, did Jesus then have an early Passover? That's been
Hmm.
proposed, instead of the actual night of Passover, would have been Friday. And so he's being crucified as Passover begins. And so, yeah. So what is Preparation Day? That's one of the big questions. We see Preparation Day being used as a reference to the activities going on in all four of the Gospels. The other thing that plays into this is what is the high Sabbath? When we get into John 19, it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. So, what is that special Sabbath? And if it's not Saturday, then what is it? And so, do we have a special High Holy Day Sabbath that is separate from Saturday? Is it special because they're falling on the same day? These are the questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I've been in the view that what's going on is that we're having the High Sabbath associated with Passover, and that basically means that we're looking at Friday being a special day of rest that precedes the weekly day of rest.
Hmm.
And I don't know, so how does that work? What rests are associated with Passover? You're the Old Testament guy. Um, how do you
Yeah.
view that?
Yeah, what's interesting is, yeah, because so you're right. So like John 19:31 says, for that Sabbath was a special day, or some translation would say it's a great day. So this is something, it seems to be that Sabbath is different. So since it was preparation day, the Jews did not want bodies to remain on the cross on the Sabbath. So this is a preparation day prior to that Sabbath day. And so the idea is that, our if this is a special Sabbath, then some have kind of distinguished or talked about the differences of Sabbaths. That you have what they say what are high Sabbath and low Sabbath. So the low would be like your regular Sabbath. There's always a Sabbath every single week. And then they have the high Sabbaths, which are the ones that are these are the ones that are the extra holidays. So I guess what people would say, and I heard an illustration like this of like, we always have our days off, and then you occasionally get those other holidays that come that will either extend your weekend or fall on the same time of that weekend. And so it just depends on when those holidays fell. So here's the thing with Passover is you have Passover and then what kicks off is 7 days is Feast of Unleavened Bread right after that. So this is what you find on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, like in Exodus 12, beginning in let's see, 14. This is the day to be a memorial for you. You must celebrate it as a festival of the Lord. You're celebrated in throughout your generations as a permanent statute. You must eat unleavened bread for 7 days. On the first day, you must remove yeast from your houses. Whoever eats the leaven from the first day through the seventh day is to be cut off. You're to hold a sacred assembly on the first day, and on another sacred assembly on the seventh day. No work may be done in those days except for preparing what people need to eat. You may do only that. You are to observe the festival of unleavened bread. This is a very special day. I brought the military divisions out of the land of Egypt. So it seems to be that there's Passover, and then there's going to be a Passover or a high Passover, a day of a day where nothing goes on except or a high Sabbath, sorry, and then so right after Passover. So it does appear in chronology, if they were going to be celebrating it this way, that you would have Passover, and then the next day after Passover would be a Sabbath. So that afternoon has to be a Sabbath, but it may not be. It may not be unless they're coinciding together. It might be that that's a first Sabbath, that's the high Sabbath, and then the next day could be the second Sabbath, the low Sabbath, the Saturday. So you've got this two Sabbaths back to back. They have a 2 day Sabbath because you've got the holy one, the high day, and all that. So you understand, like that's where it does appear there's an extra day there. Um, and there seems to be some evidence. Let me throw this one at you and see what you think. If you were to look at, so I'm opening up my Bible software. Now, some have made a big deal out of Matthew 28, and it says after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning. Some have made a big deal out of the fact that when you say Matthew 28, if you actually look what it is, it's the plural for Sabbath. So after the Sabbaths.
Mhm.
Now, when you look at how that's used, actually, I was kind of looking at it because there's a couple different times where it seems to be talking about the same Sabbath day, and then but it is something that's interesting to note that seems to be that was the preferred one for this Sabbath, and then the ones that in all this other synoptics that this could be after the Sabbaths. There's a case to be made, or it could just be mean after the Sabbath, and for some reason there's a plural there, and we don't know. So there's some to say that seems to be maybe that's what Matthew's saying is after those two Sabbath days, finally they go to the tomb. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of in I'm in agreement, I think, right now with this view that I think Passover was taking place on the Friday, and that Jesus is actually going to die on Thursday, just before sunset, and that's why the petition to break their legs before the Sabbath. I think that's referring to the Feast of Unleavened Bread kickoff Passover alignment of having a day of rest to mark this festival. And so that's I think there are two Sabbaths here. I think we're dealing with uh, the Sabbath that actually took place on Friday, and then sorry, the day of rest for Feast of Unleavened Bread is going to kick off on Friday, and then we'll have the weekly Sabbath on Saturday, and that's to me the most appealing solution to this. It does kind of mix up our celebration of Holy Week with Good Friday, but uh, this celebration and this arrangement of celebrating the Friday isn't a biblical mandate. It's kind of how we've just done the math, working back from Sunday. But I like that better. I think that that's something that's often missed is that we see Sabbath and we think that means Saturday, but there are Sabbaths all throughout the Old Testament. You have first day Sabbaths, you have second day Sabbaths. You have in the Septuagint, you have songs that are sung on third day Sabbaths and things like that. And so there are a series of Sabbaths that take place, including first day Sabbaths as well, which I think is actually the resurrection is going to consecrate Sunday as the new first day Sabbath for the church. That's a whole nother video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a very it gets a little fuzzy because what is preparation day? What's going on is it's just not entirely clear sometimes, and that's why you also have people that push back even further and say maybe Jesus died as early as Wednesday. That creates its own set of issues, but it might make other verses make sense in some ways too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Once you realize this, it adds to the complexity on which day did Jesus die. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in that situation of I waffle on this a little bit, but I think that Thursday would be then the day of Jesus's death if Friday was the Sabbath associated with Passover and the
So
first day of unleavened bread.
So right now, are you just saying, kind of in your chronology, really we're just backing up one day, which would mean instead of a Good Friday, it would be a Good Thursday. So it's Thursday afternoon, he's dead. And then you have Thursday night, Friday day, Friday night, Saturday day, Saturday night, risen on uh, Saturday day, or Sunday morning, right? Is it we're just backing it up a day, and that gives you essentially a full Friday, Saturday, and a day and a night based on, right? A third was it like a Thursday evening and a Sunday? Is that kind
Yeah,
of what I'm getting
so
at? Yeah.
what we end up with is that Jesus would be crucified on Thursday, Nisan 14th. And just as the lambs are being sacrificed to kind of signify kicking off the high day, which would be Passover. So at sundown, Passover begins, and that's on Friday. And so Jesus is in the ground Thursday daytime, which follows Thursday nighttime. It gets so confusing in the head. So he's in for the day on Thursday. He's in for the night on Friday. He's okay. So day Thursday, day Friday, day Saturday. He's in the earth. Day Friday, day. Why did I do two fingers? Okay, so 3 days,
Yeah.
and then he's in Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, which precedes Sunday day. And from the scripture, it's early in the morning. It's before sunrise. That the tomb is rolled, and so he's then on the third day, which it would be dusk. Dawn in the morning. He rises from the grave. So that gets us 3 days and 3 nights.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense of the data there with the Passover falling on Friday. And so they broke the legs of the two accompanying Jesus because they didn't want them to be on the cross on Passover. And had already passed at that point in time. And so that gets us basically all of the time that we need for him to be 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. And I just think if we do know that there's going to be two Sabbaths, so either the high Sabbath is combining the Sabbath of the festival of unleavened bread. If that fell on a Saturday by chance, then we have this really special Sabbath, and that some people view it that way. That's exactly how to understand that. Or it has to come earlier, and then that would be the argument that you have to back it up yet another day, and you have Jesus actually dying on Wednesday. I struggle with that one though because that really means that he rose on the fourth day instead of rising on the third day, and so I've had people actually tell me, "Oh yeah,
I lost you on your audio there. You can hear me. You went out, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you."
Hey, I can hear you now. So you were just saying, that you've had people say it was on a Wednesday, and that would technically be kind of like a 4 day, is what you're saying. Um, and okay, well, so let me ask you this, as we think through this, I was trying to just think about the chronology. So when you think about it, it comes back to that other idea of, okay, so what is the meal, the Lord's Supper that they're having for the Passover? In all of this, is it that they had Passover meal? They already had Passover meal, or in your mind, in this chronology, is this a pre-Passover meal?
Yeah, I think it's a pre-Passover meal. I think it's a preparation day meal, and this is where I'm not the strongest, but I have read basically that you've got kind of a pre-celebration meal as the whole feast is getting to kick off, and then you have the Passover where the lamb is slaughtered. And so one of the things that's mentioned is there is no discussion of a slaughtered lamb. There's no meat at Jesus's meal. You know, he actually has bread and wine. And so is this a pre-Passover preparation day meal as we're getting excited because Jesus knows he's not going to get to have the true Passover meal because he's going to go be slaughtered with the lambs who are killed right before kicking off the festival because we're going to enter a day of rest. So yeah, I think it's a pre-Passover preparation day meal that he has with his disciples. He calls it a Passover because it's within the theme of the feast. And I think theologically, he's pointing them to this is what Passover is all about. He's reinventing it in light of his body and his blood. So yes, I fall in line with the that he did not have the full Passover meal. He had a pre-Passover meal that was shaped by practices of preparation day and anticipating becoming the Passover lamb himself.
So yeah, I guess there's some options there of yeah, because is he so the big question is when he's crucified, is he crucified when the lambs are crucified, or is his crucifixion everything just happening on Passover? Because that's the real big issue here is when you start to think about it, is it technically Passover that he's crucified on? Which when you read, you can get that from the Gospels. They have the meal and then that day, the daytime, which is still part of that same day in the calendar, it is. Then the big question is, so here's a question. Why do you think, so besides the circumstantial evidence of like, hey, there's no lamb at the meal. We just had a Seder last night. And there was discussion that this is when he comes and does this is the last portion of the meal where you focus on the bread and on the cup. So yeah, I think there's something to be said there. Could it just be that we're at the last part of the meal anyways, and we're zeroing in on that? But yeah, is there evidence that you would say, yes, this is not that one, that this is the lambs haven't been slaughtered yet?
Yeah, I mean, John, I think, tells us that Jesus died as the lambs are being slaughtered. If I'm right, I'll try to find the verse here.
Yeah,
And this is that debate of the chronology between John's gospel and the synoptics, because Jesus uses the term Passover,
yeah.
but John indicates, I think, a little bit more forcefully that Jesus is being crucified as the lambs are being slaughtered. And of course, all the activity taking place leading up to the crucifixion, if this is indeed Passover, everybody's very, very busy
Yeah.
for a day of rest. And so I've struggled with that because it's a fun-filled morning of trials and dragging him over to go see Herod and then getting him back and then the lashings and Barabbas, all of that. There's just so much going on by the time he gets on the cross that it just seems that there's a lot of Sabbath violations if they're supposed to be resting on this day. And then to all of a sudden be concerned, hey, we got to break their legs because we can't have them on the cross during the Sabbath, but we sure can have them on the cross during the Passover. I just struggle with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
making sense. So I don't think that the Synoptic Gospels are competing with John. I think that we have in the the giving of the Passover that work is supposed to begin on the 14th, the preparation day, and that then on the 15th, for Passover, this is what we'll do. And then the Feast of Unleavened Bread being associated with all of that as well. You have all these stacked uh, these stacked feasts, and of course the festival of the first fruits is kicking in on Sunday as well. So there's just so much that's going on. It's hard to keep it all straight. But
Mhm.
yeah, Jesus could have died on Passover, but does that make as much sense as him dying on preparation day for Passover, which when everyone's celebrating Passover for really the week, them calling it Passover on Thursday when in fact the official Passover is Friday, is that
Well,
are they giving a
and there's
hard
some
definition there?
there's
Yeah.
something to be said about that because even when you read the text, sometimes it's like, the first day of like there is a real the difference between unleavened bread and the Passover day. Like they're distinct. Passover kicks off the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And it's like, but sometimes they sound like they're interchangeable. but they're not. They're separate, right? And so I think there's something to be said about that, that sometimes words can be used interchangeably, but what are they actually saying? What are they actually talking about? That's the one that I want to do track down that verse though, because it is interesting about when the lambs are being slaughtered in John, of when this is all coming together. And I can't remember off the top of my head what that passage was in John. If you can't, then then I can't figure out when that was. I think is it just the preparation day? I thought he made a specific reference too about the lambs being slaughtered, or is that just the preparation day one? I don't know if you know, but if that's off the top, if you can remember off the top of your head, but it's bothering me now because I thought I remember that, and so. Um, but anyways, yeah, John makes a big case about the preparation day. Like that's all over the place. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? What is preparation day? So if I'm hearing you correctly, though, in your view, preparation day is preparation for this Passover. And then you have Passover and Sabbath, Sabbath, and Resurrection Day. So Passover is Thursday, and you've got so just yeah, I'm trying to get back in my mind, right, about what day. It's hard. And this is what's tricky. You and I both said this. This is what's tricky about this chronology is just really trying to work through it. But look, I think the easiest thing to say is there's enough there, I think, to say that this is a real position that I think you could take, which is that maybe, just maybe, we're not looking at a Friday. Yeah, that we've added that extra Sabbath in there, and we've left it, where there is that. I think the big thing is then which is the day? What is the Passover? What is the preparation day? All of that. I think that's the stuff that I'm not quite sure on. Um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so um, there you go. Is the difference. And so like I'm looking at that article that you put out here and that you and I were looking at, and this is the one that says if you look early at the Gospels, they were talking about preparation day, having one Sabbath following another still makes sense. Well, the mention that the Sabbath being prepared was a special one, and that it was Passover preparation day. Only one singular day of preparation is ever mentioned. So if the two Sabbaths were not consecutive, there have been a separate days of preparation. So that's why his thoughts is that we don't have a day in between. Like some would like to say, hey, maybe there's a day and then a day off and then back in. And so it does appear that the best that we can say is it does seem that they're back to back Sabbaths. All right, well there you go. So that's to me is I think what gets fuzzy here.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's clear that there's probably two Sabbaths. Either there's two Sabbaths or they fall on the same day, right? And
Right.
that he's either crucified on Passover or he's crucified at the time that they're sacrificing the Passover lambs. And and those are the two things. So, and that's what makes it so like you can't just be 100% like, oh, it's this day, it's Friday, and this is how it is. I think there's just enough there to say
Yeah.
it could be one or the other, right?
I mean, I've got an older video out where I talk about the traditional week, Spy Wednesday, Holy Thursday, and then we get into Good Friday. And so I kind of go through the timeline somewhere in one of my videos if you want to go find it. But it is something that I've moved back and forth on this a little bit. And then, of course, we'll do better. I think give us another year and we'll work on this because I think there's so much to see, but it's almost you got to visually see it because there's a
Yeah.
lot going on. But it's definitely a fair situation to say, hey, we've got options here, and the traditional option works to some degree. It's not going to literally work with the Jonah prediction as tightly as you might want with 3 nights not being there. But is Jesus really locking us into 3 nights, or is it more
Yeah.
on the third day kind of language? Or did it happen on Thursday? In which case, and the other thing that I like is that we had a Wednesday, we took the Lord's Supper on Wednesday, like I said at the beginning of our discussion here. If Jesus in fact died on Thursday, then the Lord's Supper was instituted on uh, on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So that kind of changes the whole structure a little bit. The truth is, even as you're putting this together, the fathers aren't all that helpful either,
Yeah.
and it's just we kind of have established a timeline, but the Bible gives us a little bit of ambiguity on exactly which day of the week it happened. And then
Yeah,
of course, what you're,
there's
yeah,
no verses that say it was Friday or it was Saturday, right? We just know first day of the week was resurrection. Past that, we don't know how many days of the, that's the hard part. Is there's no hard fast. It was a Good Friday. Like that's a later putting it together thing.
yeah, yeah, it's fun. So, I'd say what's helpful is thinking through these things is really important. The details that we have, I don't think are hurtful of the story. It actually shows probably the historical reliability of people jotting down the details they have.
Yeah.
They're not contradictory. It's just that they can give us a couple different avenues to go. But right now I'm in the camp of I think Jesus died on Thursday. And I think that in so doing, he fulfilled the Jonah passage a little more literally.
Yeah.
Uh, and at the same time, I have no problem saying Good Friday to all my brothers and sisters across the world
Yeah.
because Jesus is certainly, he has died for our sins, and it's a sacred and reverent time. So,
Yeah. No, I would agree, man. I think more and more I look at this, I'm being swayed that it was probably an earlier date, but I don't know if I'm going to change my church calendar as for over
yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And I guess I would say the same thing. It's kind of like we can talk about this. I guess it's the what we're talking about here is the apologetic of was it literally 3 days? It's really more of an issue for us as Christians to really figure that out. But it's akin to, in my mind, getting up and doing our Christmas Eve, you know, message and being like, "Hey, look, this was probably not the date. That we're tomorrow's probably not the date of Jesus's birth, right? Probably not. But we mark it to celebrate. And I think that's probably the best way to put it as like this is a good guess. It may be off a day, it could be off by two
Right.
if the Wednesday people are right. But yeah, man, I think it's good to think through. I think it's fun. I think you should. I think go back and look at some of the language here. Look at the Matthew 12:40. What is the preparation day? And Matthew 15, Mark 15:42. Look at the high Sabbath that happens on Exodus 12:16. The John 19:31. I think all of those are verses. Like, look it together, see what the picture is, try to see what you can do. And if you've got a better idea, put it down in the comments. That's what I would say. I'd love to hear how you put it together.
Yeah, yeah, I think this will be good, but yeah, I think it's really a fun question to have and to work through. But there's a lot going on here too, theologically, that's important, and it's not just for kicks that we might debate these
Mhm.
things. But
Yeah,
yeah, so there you go. I don't know if anyone is satisfied after watching this,
I'm
but
not.
sometimes we're just in a
Just
complex
talking it
situation,
through.
right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this came from these conversations we're having, and then just you and I interacting with the material, and I'm still not like 100% on either, right? I'm still trying to figure this out. Like, I want to be in a place where I'm like, I know, but I'm not there. I think it's entertaining. I mean, for real, it's entertaining to think through it. Yeah, I'm just not there.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, well, we'll work on it. Sorry, I'm the New Testament guy. I should have better answers for you. I'll work on it. I'll get there. Maybe
Next
this time
year,
next year we'll have a good yes.
a firm date. That's what we'll do. We'll call it that. A firmer, uh,
Affirmer.
a firmer date for crucifixion. All right. Well, you ready to close out?
Yeah, let's close it up.
Let's do it. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. Thanks for listening. Hope this was helpful. See you later, guys.
Take care.
Goodbye.